Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're going to completely demystify the art of building wealth. If you've ever thought, that getting rich requires some complex math, a genius level IQ, or a fancy Ivy League degree, well, you are definitely in the right place. Because today, we're going to turn that idea entirely upside down. Let's just dive right into this, because we're focusing on behavioral psychology, which is actually the true secret engine behind financial independence. So I want you to picture this. How on earth does a janitor save up $8 million? Seriously, I want to introduce you to Ronald Reed. He was a janitor who passed away back in 2014. And when he did, he literally shocked everyone he knew by leaving behind this massive, multi-million-dollar fortune. And here's the kicker. He didn't win the lottery. He didn't inherit a single dime. He's simply lived below his means, saved consistently, and just let the absolute wonder of compound interest do its thing over his lifetime. $8 million. Just let that sink in for a second. This staggering figure completely shatters the biggest myth in finance, right? It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that you do not need a Harvard diploma or some high-stress Wall Street job to become incredibly wealthy. You really just need to behave in a sound way. And that story, it perfectly hits the nail on the head for the core thesis of Morgan Housel's groundbreaking work, The Psychology of Money. Like Housel says, financial success is not a hard science. It's a soft skill. Your behavior, your emotional control, and how you react to things are vastly more important than your raw intelligence. So to help us actually master this soft skill, we are going to systematically break down 5 core psychological frameworks today. We've got paying the hidden price, the trap of envy, why crazy makes sense, surviving black swans, and finally, the seduction of pessimism. All right, let's start with our first hurdle. Number 1, paying the hidden price, the fee of volatility. I want you to imagine just for a second that you're out shopping for a brand new, really nice watch. You want something sleek to impress your friends or maybe a date. You finally find that perfect watch, and you basically have 2 options. Option 1, you steal the watch and run out the door. Or option 2, you swipe your card at the register. Now, obviously, you're going to choose the second option and swipe your card. Why? Well, because you inherently understand that a nice watch comes with a physical price tag, right? A fee you literally have to pay. But for some crazy reason, when it comes to the stock market, people try to steal the watch. They want all those high returns without paying the price. And in investing, that price isn't measured in dollars and cents. It is measured in volatility. So what does that fee actually look like in the real world? Imagine you had the incredible foresight, say 10 years ago, to invest heavily in Netflix. You'd be incredibly rich today, right? But could you have actually paid the emotional fee for that journey? Because in 2011, Netflix lost a ton of customers, and its stock plummeted a staggering 80% from its peak. Imagine looking at your family, knowing your net worth just tanked by 80%, and somehow having the stomach to not panic sell. That agonizing pit in your stomach feeling, that is the fee of high returns. And you have to be willing to pay it. Moving right along to our second pillar, number 2, the trap of envy, the danger of never enough. See, capitalism is incredibly efficient at doing 2 very specific things. It generates immense wealth, and it generates immense envy. Here is how absolutely absurd financial comparison gets. Let's say you're Bill, okay? You're a highly specialized doctor making $500,000 a year. You are in the top 1%. You feel amazing. Until you meet your neighbor Stan. Stan's a CEO making $10 million a year. Suddenly, Bill feels poor. But wait, Stan is childhood friends with Michael Jordan, who's worth $2 billion. Next to MJ, Stan feels like he's scraping by on pennies. Does it end there? Of course not, because Michael Jordan occasionally goes to parties with Jeff Bezos, who is sitting on around $200 billion. You see the problem here? There is literally always a bigger fish. Which brings us to this absolutely crucial takeaway. Never risk what you have and need for what you don't have and don't need. The desperate urge to just surpass your peers has driven some incredibly smart people to dangerously leverage their portfolios, act on illegal insider info, and quite literally destroy their families. Figuring out and defining what is enough for you personally, that's one of the most vital investing skills you're ever going to develop. And that leads us perfectly into our third psychological framework. Number 3, why crazy makes sense. The power of perspective. We look at how other people spend their money all the time and think, wow, they are out of their minds. But we really have to realize that drastically different backgrounds, life experiences, and educations, they shape drastically different financial lenses. What seems entirely crazy to you might make absolute rational sense to someone else. For example, get a load of this statistic. It's truly shocking. The lowest income households in the United States spend, on average, over $400 a year on lottery tickets. Now, this is happening while more than a third of Americans can't even scrape together $400 for an emergency. On the surface, blowing your emergency fund on scratch-offs sounds completely insane, right? But put yourself in their shoes and consider their underlying reality for a second. Many of these folks are living strictly paycheck to paycheck. They've got almost no room to save, lack any upward career trajectory, and simply can't afford vacations or college for their kids without drowning in debt. For them, buying a lottery ticket isn't some crazy financial strategy. It's quite literally their only accessible way to buy into the dream of financial freedom that the rest of us already enjoy. When we build that empathy, we start to realize how foolish it is to just blindly copy someone else's investment strategy. A billionaire's portfolio is built to stay rich, which might totally contradict your goal of getting rich. It teaches us to stay in our own lane and ignore the hype trains, like that massive GameStop frenzy, if they don't actually fit our own goals. Okay, let's jump to Section 4, Surviving Black Swans, Expecting the Unexpected. Think about the Great Depression, World War II, the 2008 financial crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic. What do all of these massive, history-altering events have in common? They changed the world, they completely crashed the markets, and they were all entirely unpredictable. The author Nassim Taleb calls these black swans, an outlier event with extreme impact. But here is the major psychological trap. They only become explainable after the fact. Human nature constantly tricks us into believing, with the benefit of hindsight, that we could have predicted these massive crashes all along. We tell ourselves, oh, next time I'll see the crash coming and pull my money out just in the nick of time. Honestly, hoping to time a crash is a fool's errand. Look at these numbers from a 20-year S&P 500 investment. If you tried to time the market and just accidentally missed out on the 4 best-performing days over a whole 20-year period, your return drops to 164%. But if you just held on, stayed fully invested through all the absolute chaos, your return would be a massive 291%. True investors don't waste their energy trying to predict the unpredictable. Instead, they prepare themselves financially and mentally to survive whatever comes their way. And that brings us to our final section today. Number 5, the seduction of pessimism, fighting your instincts. I really want you to ask yourself a question here. Why is it that when a guy on TV predicts massive government debt, hyperinflation, and a total market collapse, he sounds like an absolute genius? But when someone says, hey, things will generally keep getting better, they just sound hopelessly naive? Well, it turns out that's not a character flaw. It is literal biology. The renowned psychologist Daniel Kahneman put it so perfectly. Organisms that treat threats as more urgent than opportunities have a better chance to survive and reproduce. We are evolutionarily hardwired to listen to the pessimist. In our minds, losses simply loom much, much larger than gains. We pay attention to fear because, historically speaking, fear is what kept our ancestors alive. Plus, think about it. Setbacks happen overnight, while progress happens over decades. A sudden market crash or a terrible tragedy makes for a highly persuasive, urgent, short-term story for the evening news. Progress, on the other hand, it's slow. It's super quiet. But as the famous statistician Hans Rosling pointed out, long-term progress is steadily making the world much better than we think. Life expectancy goes up. Technology gets cheaper. The patient optimist is the one who ultimately wins big in the market, even if the loud pessimist is the one getting all the attention. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative question to really chew on. Are you preparing for the unthinkable, or are you just wasting your energy trying to predict it? Mastering the psychology of money means accepting that volatility, defining your own personal enough, and trusting in long-term optimism over short-term fear. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the soft skill of wealth. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep mastering your mindset.